Part X, The Stone Carrier's a sequel to his kiss, the guillotine prologue. The inheritance, the girl who would change everything, was born in the 32nd year of the Managed Emotional Stability Program. To parents who had never learned to swim, her name was Noah Reeves Tanaka, Sophia's niece, Yuki's great-granddaughter, a lineage written entirely in drowning and survival. She grew up in a world that had tried feeling, failed at it, and retreated into the comfortable fiction that regulation was not suppression, that managed connection was still connection, that the gray was merely neutral rather than the particular color of surrender. She grew up, in other words, knowing exactly what had been lost. Part 1. The Museum of Feeling. They had converted the new Penitence Institute into a museum. This was perhaps the cruelest thing the Department of Cultural Memory had ever done, preserving the shell of the school while emptying it of everything that had made it dangerous. The classrooms were labeled with tasteful plaques. Room 7, site of student death, year 5. The memorial garden had been landscaped into symmetry, the unauthorized stones quietly removed, both epitaphs replaced with a single institutional one. They tried. They are remembered. Noah stood in the garden on the day of her 18th birthday, reading that plaque with the particular fury of someone who had spent years learning to feel things precisely, and therefore could not mistake grief for anything else. They flattened it, she said behind her, an old woman's voice. They always do. She turned. Dr. Amara Patel was 91, moving with the careful economy of someone who had made peace with limitation. She carried a notebook, not Cale's, which had gone into the Institute's archive behind glass, but her own, filled with the same patient sketches of the same endless faces. You knew my aunt, Noah said, not a question. Cut her down. Amara said it plainly, without flinching. I've had 40 years to decide whether that makes me complicit. I still don't know. What do you know? The old woman looked at the smoothed garden, the uniform stones, the tasteful plaques. I know what this is. They call it remembrance. It's actually sedation. She turned to Noah. And I know your great-grandmother could still swim at 90. I watched her do it, so I know it's possible. Some people, Amara agreed. That's the honest answer. It always was. Part 2. The cartographers, the swimming underground, had gone through 7 iterations in 30 years. Each time, MES agents dismantled one network. Another formed from the survivors, smaller and more careful, and carrying the hard knowledge of what had collapsed before. They had learned to stop trying to save everyone. They had learned to stop calling it failure when they couldn't. Alina Vasquez, now 53, ran the 8th iteration out of a print shop in what had been Shanghai's old quarter. She was teaching 2 young women to set type when Noah found her manual type, lead letters, the kind that left ink under your fingernails. Physical copies, Alina explained without looking up. They can scrub servers. They have a harder time scrubbing paper hidden in walls. I want to learn to swim, Noah said. Everyone says that. Alina finally looked at her. Whatever she saw made her pause. What's your lineage? Sophia Reeves, Jordan Reeves, Yuki and Kenji Tanaka. God. Alina set down her type. You're carrying half the history of this movement in your nervous system. I know. That's why I need to learn properly. Noah pulled out a folder, documents, printouts, annotations. I've been mapping the patterns, who drowned and why, what the swimmers did differently, what the floaters found that worked, the mercy cases. She hesitated. The ones we could have saved and didn't. Alina looked at the maps. They were extraordinary, not clinical data, but something more like emotional cartography, tracing the movements of feeling through generations, the way geologists traced fault lines. Where did you get this? Been collecting it since I was 12. From the underground archives, from the museum's official records, from an old woman named Amara Patel, who kept better notes than anyone. Do you want to do with it? Noah looked up. I want to teach people to read the water before they enter it. Not just swimming techniques, not just permission to float. I want to teach them to know themselves well enough to understand what kind of water they're built for. That's not what the schools taught. The schools taught one method and trusted that humanity would sort itself out. Noah tapped her maps. I want to teach the sorting first. 3. The language of water. The first sessions happened in Alina's back room. 6 students at a time, by candlelight because the overhead bulb flickered, and no one wanted to draw attention with an electrician. Noah taught what she had mapped first. What kind of water are you? Not swimmers or sinkers or floaters. Those categories had become the problem, had sorted people into worth and worthlessness. Instead, what does your nervous system do with feeling? Does it amplify, dampen, scatter, or hold? Does it carry your parents' history in your gut, your chest, your hands? Where do you feel the current first, second? What did the water do before you? Because Sophia had drowned partly from Sophia's own pain, and partly from Jordan's fear, and partly from every generation that had never been taught to distinguish between inherited terror and present danger. The water that filled your lungs wasn't always the water in the room. Third, what do you do with what you can't fix? This was the question the schools had avoided. The protocols had assumed that understanding was sufficient, that if you named the trauma, you could metabolize it. But some damage wasn't metabolizable. Some inherited neural architecture just was what it was. The question wasn't how to fix it. The question was how to live in it honestly. Teaching people to not swim, one student said, halfway through the 3rd session. His name was Cole, 16, the son of 2 MES generation parents, who had been so carefully regulated they didn't know how to hold him. I'm teaching you to choose your water, Noah said. Swimming is real. It works for some people. Floating is real and underrated. And some people genuinely can't do either safely, and they deserve to know that before they drown trying to prove something. If someone is a sinker, the room went quiet. They all knew what sinker meant now. They had read the testimonies, read River's last words, read Jordan's note. Then they're not a failure, Noah said. And there are things beyond swimming and floating. There are ways to be in water without going under, to be near it, to understand it, to love people who swim while keeping your own feet on solid ground. She paused. The old schools tried to put everyone in the water. I want to give people the option of the shore. The shore enough? Cole asked quietly. To be human from the shore. Noah thought of Cale, 9 93 years old, carrying 14 stones, never swimming, but never turning away from those who did, bearing witness. That was its own kind of humanity. Yes, she said, it's enough. Part 4. The stone carriers there was a practice that had developed in the underground, informal and uncodified, that Noah formalized in her 4th year of teaching. The stone carriers. Not Cale's stones. His had been a private penance, a way of carrying the dead as weight, as punishment, as proof that the kisses had cost him something. These stones were different. Each stone represented someone who had drowned. Not as memorial. The museum did memorials, and they were hollow. As knowledge. You carried the stone until you understood something specific about that person's drowning. Not just that they had died, but how the water had been too deep for them, why the teaching had reached its limit, what might have been different. Then you set it down. Not to forget. To make room for the living. This sounds like grief work, Amara said when Noah described it. The old woman was 92 now, coming to the sessions when her body allowed, sometimes just sitting and listening. It is grief work, Noah said, but specific grief. The schools asked us to honor the sinkers. I'm asking us to learn from them. There's a difference. What have you learned? Noah was quiet for a moment. That most of them weren't inevitable. Not all river was right. Some nervous systems are too damaged, and mercy was kinder than the alternative. But Sophia, Jordan, half the students on that memorial wall, they drowned because the teaching came too late, because they were given swimming lessons when they needed shore lessons first, because no one asked them what kind of water they were before throwing them in. Didn't know to ask. I know. Noah touched the old woman's hand. That's why I'm asking now. Part 5. The return in the 35th year of MES. Noah published her maps, not digitally. Alina had been right about servers. Printed, hand-distributed, passed through the networks of the underground. A cartography of feeling. What the schools learned and what they missed. It was not a defense of the schools. It was not a condemnation of them either. It was an honest accounting of what had worked, what hadn't, what the survivors had built from the wreckage, what they were still trying to build. It was, she said in the introduction, a letter to everyone who had ever tried to learn to swim and found the water too deep. You were not wrong to try. The schools were not wrong to teach. We were wrong about one thing only. We thought swimming was the goal. It isn't. Being in honest relationship with water, whatever that looks like for your particular nervous system, that's the goal. Some of you will swim. Some will float. Some will love swimmers from the shore. Some will need to leave the water entirely, and that is a valid form of survival. The gray is not safety, but neither is drowning. We have spent a century lurching between those two failures. It is time to map the space between. The MES authorities confiscated every copy they could find. They missed most of them. Epilogue. The Shore Amara Patel died in the spring, at 93, in the memorial garden of the closed New Penitence Institute. She had asked to be taken there, and Noah had arranged it, and they had sat together in the early morning light among the institutional stones, and the unauthorized ones that kept appearing, no matter how many times the Department of Cultural Memory removed them. Both epitaphs, Amara said near the end, both Noah agreed. They tried to swim. The water was too deep. They tried to swim. They made it to shore. Are we making progress? Amara asked. Her eyes were closed. She was asking something real. Noah looked at the stones. She thought of Cole, who had built a life on the shore and called it enough, because it was. She thought of the student who had learned she was a floater and wept with relief, because she had spent 3 years believing she was a failed swimmer. She thought of the 2 students she had lost this year, drowned despite everything, carried now in the notebooks, held in honest grief rather than shame. Some people are swimming who would have drowned, Noah said finally. Some people are on the shore who would have been forced into the water. Some people received mercy who would have died alone and ashamed. She paused. And we're still losing people we shouldn't lose. Will we ever stop? No, Noah said. But we're losing fewer. And the ones we lose, we grieve honestly now. We don't pretend they failed. We say, the water was too deep. We say, we're learning. She looked at the old woman's face, peaceful now, nearly at the end of its long labor. That has to count for something. It does, Amara said. It counts. She died as the sun came fully up, in the garden among the stones, with Noah's hand in hers, and the names of the dead all around her, and somewhere in the distance, the sound of the city beginning its day, people moving through it, feeling things, choosing their water, swimming and floating, and standing on shores, and sometimes drowning, being human, impossibly, dangerously, beautifully human. Noah sat with her until the stillness was complete. Then she opened her notebook and drew one more face and wrote beneath it, she tried to teach us. She made it to shore. That was enough. That was everything.